Hello everyone, welcome to the Kevin Lee Social. Thank you for tuning in. What initially began as an 8-part series interviewing entrepreneurs to share and inspire how they've successfully pivoted during COVID-19, I have decided not only to continue this series, but also to expand on the scope to understand and learn about people's craft, philosophy, the challenges they face in the industry, and their favorite failures that have helped shape them to become who they are today. By going deeper and understanding different thought leaders, businesses, and industries, the idea is to help cross-pollinate ideas applicable in your life and inspire action in this new norm we live in. I hope you enjoy the show. Thank you. Before we get on with the show, today's podcast is sponsored by Altitude Tea. Altitude Tea specializes in rare and exotic teas you can't find on supermarket shelves. Teas grown on high altitudes are more nutrient-dense due to the cold nights and misty peaks that slows the growth of the tea plant, leading to a higher concentration of aromatic oils and richer flavors. They are located in Waterloo and they do private tea ceremonies where you can learn how to drink tea mindfully using a traditional gongfu set and have over 20 varieties of tea to choose from. For our listeners, you can use the code BEYOND at checkout for 15% off. Today we have Dave Young. Dave grew up in a small town on Georgian Bay, Ontario, Canada, but always had big ideas and dreams. As a teenager, he became fascinated with real estate and bought his first apartment building at age 25. While developing a real estate portfolio, Dave launched a real estate technology company to help shift the organized real estate community. A chance phone call in 2013 led Dave to becoming a regional partner with upstart custom home building network, Alair Homes. Today, he's a regional partner and business coach in 5 different Alair Home regions, covering North Carolina, South Carolina, Manitoba, and Eastern Ontario. In 2021, Dave and co-host Duane Johns launched the Builder Nuggets podcast. Each week, they bring together thought leaders to help contractors everywhere build more rewarding businesses. Everyone, please help me welcome Dave. Hey, Dave. Welcome to the show. Thank you for coming on.
Yeah, thanks. I'm happy to get to spend some time with you after listening to a few episodes. It's great to be here.
Yeah, I'm grateful to Justin for connecting us. I read you up and I thought, okay, I've got to connect with Dave. Let's hit you up and have a great chat. Hopefully share some nuggets with the audience.
Yeah. Thanks for throwing nuggets in there as well. Justin has been great. He's a super connector. And everyone he has put me in touch with has just been fantastic to collaborate with. So I'm looking forward to digging in and sharing some time together with you and with your audience.
Awesome. Dave, you came from a real estate background, but say that you got involved in the construction industry through a timely phone call. That sounds like an interesting story. Can you share more with us?
Yeah. So growing up, I knew from a very early age that I wanted to be involved with real estate, and particularly real estate investment. And probably started from around the age of 12 when my parents started to renovate. Their purchased and were encouraged to get into residential rental properties. And it started with just one single duplex that my brothers and I were brought in on to like sweep drywall dust and do a little bit of site stuff. And I don't have much construction experience beyond that, so it's funny as we'll get to later, but I was just really intrigued by real estate investment, this opportunity to be able to use a little bit of your own money, borrow the rest, acquire an asset that somebody else's rent and revenue pays down your debt, and you get to keep the difference, and eventually this thing will be paid off. And I thought, wow, that's really interesting and it's scalable. I bought my first apartment building at 25 years old. It was a deal from, it was just very timely that I had the opportunity to sit down with the owner, and it was actually at a picnic table over a hamburger where I learned that he was willing to sell this property, and we started to work on putting together a deal. At a very early age, I developed this passion, also had a real estate license at the time. Then I got interested in real estate technology and had my own company and was involved in that, and actually had a project that didn't work out the way I wanted in terms of a tech project that didn't go how I wanted. And one day I got a phone call out of the blue from a franchise broker who I knew from another endeavor, and he wanted to tell me, he was very excited to tell me about a new business concept that he was going to be representing. And it was something that he wanted to get in on. And it was shifting an industry and driving change and was so exciting. I said, okay, well, what is it? And he said, it's a construction franchise, custom home building franchise. And I said, man, I am out. I knew right away that it's a bit of a joke in my house that the best tool in the toolbox is the checkbook. If you really want to have it done, I have to pay somebody else. So I don't have the patience for intricate work. I'm great at demo, not so good at cleaning it all up, but I can bash the crap out of stuff, but not really good at putting it all back together. It's just not a skill set of mine. So I knew right away that this was not going to be for me. And he said, wait, hold on. It's a business opportunity, really. You're not going to be the guy building the houses. But I just want you to have a 30-minute phone call with the founder and CEO. He's a young, engaging guy. He's got a great vision. Just do me a favor, take this call. I said, well, I guess. He said, okay, good, because I already told him you would. So thank you. So I booked a 30-minute call with Blair McDaniel, who is the founder of Alair Homes. And I think I said this was in 2013. And that 30-minute call went 2 hours and 45 minutes.
Wow.
And we connected on a bunch of different levels. He had an apartment building portfolio as well. We just talked about all kinds of stuff. And it was really fun and exciting for me to hear a young guy's vision, because I think he was only maybe early 30s at the time, for what he thought the construction industry in North America could be and why it was the way it was now. And what I mean by that was he shared with me that the industry was really fractured. You have hundreds of thousands of custom home builders and remodelers who all have different business models. They're running under different brands. They don't have much shared services. They're trying to figure out everything on their own. They struggle with accountability. And he had started Alair as a bit of a mastermind. And it wasn't originally intended to be a franchise. It was 3 guys who got together and decided that they wanted to share services, and Blair had some of those services already in place. So he shared his vision that every other industry that he could think of had been through some form of consolidation. And when you think about it, it's true from hotels, restaurants, even the automotive industry, the real estate community. They all, at some point in time, began to realize that they could be better, they could elevate themselves if they had access to shared services, shared brands, shared mastermind, and some form of accountability. So I was completely intrigued. I said, yeah, I will actually, I'm in. I'll do it. What do we need to do next? So that summer, I became a regional partner with Alair. And the way they set the business up was that the regional partners would be responsible for overseeing a given regional area and identifying existing successful builders that we would approach to partner with, put our energy and resources into, and together we would join this network. So part of that was Blair said, you have to start, if you're going to be bringing in these builders, introducing them, and then supporting them and helping them develop their businesses, then you need to be able to demonstrate that you can run one. So I had to start a construction company. The very thing that I was afraid of and was petrified about was now I have to start a construction company. So I did that. Ironically, just because of the way the territories worked, I ended up having 2 of them. And the opportunity was good enough. The mission was good enough. The vision was good enough. The leadership and the idea was so compelling that I was willing to do this. And ultimately started those, managed the first project myself. Thankfully, I had a good team of people around me that did all the real building, and subsequently brought in my first project manager, who became a general manager, and then my business partner. And ultimately, he and another business partner have bought me out. And that's allowed me to focus on the region. And so that's it. And now within Alair, I've expanded to open up the South Carolina market, North Carolina market, and the province of Manitoba as well. So going from that kid sweeping the floor, not having much construction talent, to now being at the stage I get to collaborate with some of the top builders on the planet and in growing their businesses. And ultimately that transitions now into the next phase, which was getting into the podcast.
I like the journey of the part that how you're starting to connect all the knowledge that you've learned, building community, educating the people in your industry, and then going from there, starting to share that on a podcast platform. And by the way, Builder Nuggets is an amazing podcast. I love the energy that you and Duane have. I've always, because I do solo, I've always wondered what it would be like with a partner. And you guys have that synergy there, and you guys bounce off each other, and you guys have an extra guest. It's amazing.
Yeah, thanks. I appreciate that, Kevin.
And so, what was the idea between moving from that into podcasts? And
yeah, good question. Because what we found is, so context for the audience here. So my business partner in the podcast, Duane, he's also my business partner in North Carolina. And when I opened that up, I was looking for an established industry veteran that already had contacts and was firmly entrenched in that market, and was fortunate to find him. And through our discussions, we spoke many times as we started to coach the builders within our own region. And one of the things we noticed is that so many hundreds of thousands of builders who are at retirement age, and we didn't know any stories of anyone who had successfully sold their business and had an elegant exit to a third party. Yes, there'd been the odd one where somebody sold to an employee or some shares, but there was this huge void in the marketplace where, and it's heartbreaking that somebody would work 40 years on their business and most of them were shutting their doors. So we recognize, well, we got to get what we were learning within Alair was how to create a more valuable business, how to create more opportunity, how to attract talent to your team, the systems and infrastructure and everything that you need to have it. And so we decided we're just going to start sharing that, because not only was there that exit challenge, there was also a challenge of attracting young people to the marketplace and to the industry itself, which is really, it's a key issue in North America. The industry has commoditized itself. So we decided we're going to take what we've learned from within Alair and share it, and not just within Alair. Duane had 20 plus years of experience on his own, and start to share this with the community to try and do our part to elevate it and to get to know more builders. And a funny thing happened through that is we were expecting to be the ones delivering all of the information. As we started to attract guests from even outside the industry, strategic thinkers, thought leaders, industry leaders, we began to realize this could be much more powerful if it's not just us, but bringing in all these guests and their experiences, and then applying that to the coaching that we're doing as well. So we're very much of the mindset that it's collaboration over competition, and the most successful entrepreneurs, they get that. They realize that at the end of the day, none of us really have any competition. It's you're choosing the clients that you want to, if you can get to the space where you're choosing the clients that you want to work with, you're creating opportunity for other people who think like you. There's just a level of abundance. There's enough for everyone to go around. And that's what we embarked on. And our mission is to help business owners create freedom for themselves and for their team, and more rewarding businesses. And that can mean a lot of different things. Yeah, we're just over a year in. We're humbled by the response. We're two guys who had never done this before. I'd only even listened to one podcast prior to this. So it was, again, one of those things. You're just going to go for it. So it was scary, but worth it. And we've met some fantastic people, and it's having a real impact. Mm. You've probably experienced the same thing on your show, like what you didn't know what to expect. And then it's when you have these connections and you get to know some of these people, and we have repeat guests coming in, it's a real honor to be able to do this. And you're trying to educate other people. You learn as much yourself as well.
Yes. I love the how with your abundant mindset, it's all about collaboration and sharing from what you've learned from your industry, sharing it with the people, but then learning from the people that you interview and then sharing that back out again. And so Justin would call this a quadruple win.
Yeah, yeah,
Also.
yeah. That's what he was calling. He got to the triple one day, and I said, "There's a fourth level here if you include the audience," and so he got excited about that. Yeah, that's true.
And to continue on topic with your podcast,
Yes.
with your co-host Duane, you often mention topics about building freedom into your business. What do you mean? What do you guys mean by that?
Yeah, that's a really good question, because that can mean different things to different people, right? It's funny. We used that word early on, and even before I joined Strategic Coach, and I'll tell you how that's relevant in a second. And I'd actually named, I have a brother who's a yacht broker, and in Canada, in Vancouver. And he had called me when he started his business, I think in 1999 or right around 2000, when he went out on his own. And he said, I need a name. And he says, like, I interviewed him about what boating meant to him and business. And I said, okay, the name of your business is Freedom Marine. And it's interesting because I think there's a Freedom Marine in Australia as well. And freedom is the ability to have options and choices. There's nothing like that. When you have options and choices instead of decisions, or decisions that you have to make, the world is a pretty good place to be. So we just thought we want to create freedom for these builders, so they're not tied to the business. They're not like a sole proprietor. Everything doesn't rely on them, that they can create something valuable that is rewarding and runs well with less of their time. And as I started to dig into a Strategic Coach led by Dan Sullivan, he and Ben Hardy published a book called Who Not How that was a game changer for me. And in there, they talk about 4 different freedoms. And those are the freedom of time, the freedom of money, the freedom of purpose, and the freedom of relationship. So when you ask, what does freedom mean to you? Thanks to those guys, it's now a little bit more structured and explained very well in the book. And what it means, freedom of time, obviously, time is one of the most valuable things we all have. We cannot get it back. So the ability to choose how much time you're going to spend on what, and have the time to be able to do it as a choice instead of being forced to it. The freedom of purpose is the ability to work on exciting things that are meaningful to you. So as a builder, if you're a custom home builder and you want to do really nice high level craftsmanship homes and take your time with them, then you can be able to do that. If you want to be more of a production based builder, that's what it means to you. You're not taking jobs because you have to. That's a commodity mindset, or that's a commodity position. You have the freedom to pick and choose the types, and whatever it is in your business, the types of projects that you want to do. So having that freedom of purpose is very important. Freedom of money, obviously, financial freedom. Everybody knows what that means. I usually leave that one to the last. But freedom of relationship became a very important one. And we recognized that we watch the very best builders and the very best business owners. They get to do business with who they want to do business with. When you interviewed Justin Green, he talked about the time that he gets to spend with his family. That's a choice. That's freedom of relationship. So imagine a business where your clients are all your ideal clients. You spend your free time only with the people that you want to spend your time with. All your staff and your team, they're there and they all want to be with each other. Your third-party service providers, they all get it. You have total freedom over building that. So that's an amazing spot to get to. So when we're coaching a business owner, we're teaching them about these things. We're looking through that lens saying, all right, are you making a decision based on that? It's not the same as their core values, but we're able to look at the decisions, the things that they're doing. Are you choosing that client because it's a big job? Or are you choosing that client or choosing to go after the project with that client because you know that you can make that client extremely happy? That if you bring that client on and could be a 18-month relationship with this particular client, are you setting your team up for success? Are they going to be able to make that client happy? Are you all going to be able to have a rewarding experience together? And if you focus on that's how you create a culture of freedom you've got passionate people who are working on things that they're excited about, and it's meaningful to them. It's good relationships. They believe in the mission. They're spending the right amount they're investing the right amount of time in that, and it's financially rewarding for them as well. Long-winded answer there.
And with this model of freedom that you've built, where can people access that, or do you supply it online somewhere or anything like that?
Yes. Yeah. It's accessed by downloading or picking up the book Who Not How by Dan Sullivan and Ben Hardy, Dr. Ben Hardy. There's a chapter in it on the 4 freedoms, clearly defined much more eloquently than I did there. And but one of the aspects of this, and I'm not sure if this is the right time to go in it, but one that resonated with me personally was freedom of relationship. And I described it earlier with choosing who you get to work with and for and collaborate with. But one thing that struck me after I read it, and combined with some of the other things I had been learning about, particularly EOS traction and the roles of the visionary and the integrator, was freedom of relationship with yourself and understanding who you are, what you're good at, what you're not good at. That's something that maybe at some point we can maybe dig into as well. But it was something that was quite freeing for me. And I'm sure other business owners suffer, or entrepreneurs suffer some form of a visionary's curse where they get stuck in their own ideas and don't quite know what to do. So that's something that we can dig into it in a little if you want to as well.
Thank you for sharing that. With the whole freedom model, it's a lot of us going into it, you struggle with the time because you spend so much time building your business. Yeah. And then you tend to start losing your purpose, and everything is because of the scarcity mindset of money. And so it's a vicious cycle that digs into relationships. So you don't really get to pick anyone that you want to work with, because it's all about keeping it afloat, and that vicious cycle perpetuates itself, and it goes again and again. And
it's a race to the bottom, right? Because you then, your magnet or the power of your mission, the purpose diminishes. So now you feel like you have to settle, or you're hiring that person that you normally wouldn't because of that, or you're taking that job, or you're making a decision that you wouldn't otherwise. And it can accelerate the decline quite quickly, but it's a real challenge to pull yourself back up out of that. And yeah, we can dig into that at some point too.
And at the end of the last part, you mentioned a little bit about the team and getting, letting them understand. So with the whole freedom vision, often people think about the business, them getting all the freedom, them getting to make all the choices. And as we all know, the business is not just the owner, it's the team that leverages. How do you think about getting the team to buy into the freedom model?
Yeah, it's a valid point, because a lot of times when people look at business owners, and if they're talking about freedom, or especially if it's financial, there's a tendency to just want to assume that it's the business owner who's getting rich and they're the only ones who are benefiting from it. And in many cases, that can be true. That's poison for the culture. The ideal scenario is that your team is all part of that success, and that the owner is positioning it as freedom is something that's rewarding, and that it's rewarding for everyone. So my wife always says, if you want buy-in, you need weigh-in. You need to have a collaborative team culture where everybody understands what their role is. But your job as a leader shifts from creating freedom and rewards for yourself to creating freedom and a rewarding environment for your team. And when you can do that, and they start doing it for each other, you get a real cultural elevation, and everybody begins to enjoy more of whatever freedom means to them. And their mission, you have the group mission, which may be something to do with a restaurant experience or whatever, but people always have their own personal goals within those missions as well. And respecting those, elevating those, supporting those, getting behind them when times are tough and helping to elevate them goes a long way. So when the owner makes it, or the leader makes it about the team, gives them the opportunity to lead back, because one of the hallmarks of a great leader is the ability to accept leadership and to encourage your team to lead you, and for you to sometimes maybe take a back seat in those stages and recognize that these teammates are here because they're better than you at those particular tasks. Otherwise, you'd be doing all of them. That's the kind of place that you want to get to in a successful, thriving business, where it comes down to delivering a rewarding experience to each other. Because if that's happening, your clients are getting a rewarding experience, your suppliers are getting a rewarding experience. Anybody who's affiliated with your organization is feeling that. And that becomes highly attractive from the outside looking in. This is how you create that culture magnet that draws in your next employees, your next clients, your next market partners, or whatever it may be, investors even. But the influencers who want to get behind you and your brand, because they can see the mission and how you treat each other. So it's, once you get that going, you need to preserve it. And it's very tough as you get bigger and bigger, and the complexities of running a large business seem sometimes to stifle that. But there are a few organizations that are able to do that pretty well.
Beautifully said, Dave, with sharing about leadership and the importance of it. As in my own personal journey, and of course many others in the entrepreneurship space, the more that we're getting to, and as you said, the larger it becomes, the more challenging it becomes, because of, I've read somewhere that the leader isn't, or the business owner isn't always responsible for the metric, but he's responsible to lead the people that are responsible for those metrics. And so it becomes more about how to become a better leader, how to positively influence the team, and understanding personalities and group dynamics and relationships. And so that kind of segues us into, what do you see as the role of a leader in a business, and what makes a good leader to you?
Yes, one of the things that I believe in is creating opportunity for other people. If you're a visionary leader, your skill set, or your highest and best use, or Justin would say your superpower, is to create meaningful projects, initiatives, have a meaningful vision that people want to be a part of, and then focus on them. We talked about freedom of time. When you're asking somebody for their time, you're asking them to make a time investment in you and your company and your mission. That's the most precious thing aside from family, but your time is the most valuable commodity you have. So you're asking them to invest their time into your mission, to your company, and to where you're going. In order to do that, in order to have the right to ask that, you need to first be able to make investments in them. And I remember being at an Alair meeting in Manitoba, in Winnipeg, Manitoba. And we had a project manager named Trevor, who was just pouring his guts into his job and really going the extra mile. And in the meeting, I just asked him, like, Trevor, like, you've been doing all this extra stuff. Thank you so much. We just did a shout out to him and said, what motivated you to go this extra mile and make this kind of investment? He said, I'm in working for Mike, who was the leader of his company, owner of the company, said, Mike made investments in me. Mike trusted me with these opportunities. Mike made this happen. And the rest of the team supported that. And the rest of the region supported that. So he said it was easy for me to make the investment because I felt invested in first. And that's such a great thing to hear. And I was so happy for that team and for that region, that these are the kinds of things that are emerging out of the culture that they had at that moment in time. So, that is really important, to continually invest in your team. I think a good leader also continually invests in themselves, in learning and going out and seeking new knowledge, new relationships. Reading is a huge thing, collaborating with other top leaders so that they can stay ahead of the curve and identify those opportunities and stay ahead of things as well, and really learn how to support them. Being a good listener is key. A lot of times leaders, business owners, the construction industry is famous for it, where it's a bit hard-nosed, old school, do it my way because I told you. And today that just doesn't work anymore. It's a commodity mindset, right? So you won't have people who are dedicated to that, being able to listen, understand what's going on with them, getting to know them as people. One of the things that was helpful for me was, I talked about freedom of relationship with yourself, understanding my weaknesses and not trying to fix them. So that's a weird thing to say. I'm not trying to fix your weaknesses. If we spend time focused on our strengths and in that unique ability zone where we're really excited and happy and we can add value versus the things that we're not good at some point you have to call it and say, these are things I should not be doing anymore. These are opportunities for somebody else. It may feel like grunt work to you or the stuff that's thorns in your eyeballs, but to somebody else that could be meaningful work if it's properly positioned and set up for them and they're put in that position. So I spend a lot of time digging into what my highest and best use was, where I could add value, understanding my strengths, and instead of feeling guilty about my weaknesses or ashamed or having the stigma around that and feeling like other people judged me or didn't get me or whatever, or sometimes feeling like a failure on certain things, I just looked at it as I'm going to focus on the areas that I really add value and I'm going to bring in. And again, this is the premise of Who Not How. When you're struggling with something, there's a reason. It's either you're not good at it, you're not meant to be doing it, it's not meaningful to you. So you should look to see, is it meaningful to somebody else? Can this be an opportunity for them? And that's very different from passing the buck. A lot of times there's a stigma around that. Hey, you're delegating, you're telling somebody else what to do. But if you elevate that person first and then delegate something to them, or you give them something and give them control over it, and that's their task and they own it, and you support them in that, that is elevating as well. And the whole organization is elevated, and you as the business owner are elevated as well too, because you're no longer working on something that you shouldn't be. So getting to know yourself and then really getting to understand what makes your team tick. So I recommend the Colby. I think Justin may have mentioned that as well. Really great way to understand how you're wired, what your energy should be going into, and also the Clifton strengths, knowing where, what your gifts are, what your talents are, and understanding the talents of your group from a third party expert is really key. And it's amazing when you start to dig into that, because it's one thing to know what you're good at and how you communicate. It's another thing to really understand that your teammate may need a different communication style. They may need things explained a different way, and they can how they approach adding value is unique to them, and having some training around that. So on my leadership team, we've all taken our Colby scores, and we have somebody on our team named Kate who leads stuff around that and really has dug into it. She also leads our EOS, and having that cadence, that understanding of each other, defined roles, defined accountability, complete support of each other was a game changer for us. It got me out of so many things that I shouldn't have been working on, and allows me to really put the pedal down on the things where I add value. And I think, who wouldn't want to be in that position? So when I think of my other teammates, they're doing things that they love, and we're all having a great time, and the team just flourishes, and we're getting better and better results. We're not perfect by any means, but it's the ideal scenario. So again, an expanded answer on know your team, know how they think, know how they feel, know what they're passionate about, learn how their energy should be used, and what's the right way to communicate with them, not just your way.
Thank you, Dave, for sharing the abundance of knowledge you have. That's like a mountain of nuggets just dropped. And
yeah, so you might have to sort through them a little.
No, it's all good. And this is where it starts to get really juicy for me. And my mind just goes, okay, let's go into a bit more granular and understand the system and process a bit more. How does he do that? And so you shared bits and pieces of it, like getting the staff to do the Colby test or Clifton Strengths test and working all that out. Now, I wanted to draw a bit more of a visual image for the audience and myself as well. So, for example, what does like a weekly meeting or your schedule look like over a week? For example, you've mentioned your leadership team, and then you have was it Kate that leads the meetings, and she has access to everyone's Colby tests. How does that all work out? Do you get everyone in the team to do the test, and then that kind of goes to one person, and she sorts out all the tasks? Or I'm curious of how you
Yeah,
work this
it
out.
doesn't. Yeah, it doesn't quite work like that. The Colby piece is to understand how to communicate where somebody's energy should best be spent, whether they're more of a visionary thinker or an implementer, doer, how much information they need to make a decision. So that does play into roles. Where our roles are defined, and because we use EOS, our roles are defined with something called an accountability chart. And Kate really dug in to learn about traction and EOS, and is our self implementer. So, and actually Duane was the one who introduced it to all of us, and so he's very proficient at it as well. Most businesses have three separate functions that are sales, operations, and finance. So if you picture those three boxes across the middle of a page, and then right above that is an integrator, and then connected to that right above. And by being above, it's not a hierarchical thing. It's just the easiest way to describe it is the visionary. So we broke it down as to what is the role of the visionary? Okay, that's probably to lead the culture, to look at the big picture stuff, larger relationships, things like that. The integrator's job is to, one, understand and help the visionary to communicate that vision, but also to largely to make sure that they're almost really the boss of everything, because they're the final decision maker. So they're leading, managing, and accountable for the rest of the team. And which in EOS speak, they just call LMA. It's LMA. And that integrator works with the ops team, the finance team, and the sales team in identifying those teams have 5 key things. And those 5 key things will differ depending on your business, but it's really simplified. And the tasks within there are being led by those individual, whoever's name is in those individual boxes. And then you have employees or other team members underneath. But difficult to explain. You could probably get Kate on the show sometime to walk you through it, or an EOS implementer. But the result of this is there's certain tools and a language. So your entire organization is running on this same operating system. And it's not your processes or how you build things or, how you put your restaurant together. This is how you communicate with each other. So it's a common language. And you have weekly, monthly, quarterly, annual meetings that all run the same way. All the stakeholders are using the same thing. It's structured, so you have way less wasted time. Really focused. So, for example, the majority of meetings is usually spent identifying, describing, and solving either an issue or an opportunity. There's something in this discussion that should be identified, discussed, or solved. It moves down to that part of the meeting and just goes into that bucket, and then you prioritize them and you work on the ones you can in those meetings. So level 10 meeting, very good tool for helping you to stay on track. And then the other tools within the system are things around setting goals, determining roles. Duane and I used to call it highest and best use. They have a tool called the People Analyzer, where it just breaks down, what should I be working on? You do a self-assessment. You take an inventory of, what am I doing now? Do I like it? Am I good at it? And if it's not something that you like and you're good at, it needs to get a set aside, and the team will look to see, hey, do we have another resource who can do this? Do we need to hire a third party to do it? Do we have to hire somebody to do it? Or is there a piece of technology that can replace it? So I have not described it nearly as elegantly as Kate or an EOS implementer would, but it's definitely worth any business owner learning about. It really changed how we ran our business. And after Duane started to promote it, and Duane and Kate really together implemented it within our structure, the rest of Alair began to embrace it and adopt it. And now over 100 construction companies all using it, in the entire network, and the Alair leadership team using it as well. So it's very scalable.
Thank you so much, Dave, for trying your best to share that. And it was clear to me. I understood it, and it's given me a lot of leads to look into. It's a great piece of information and knowledge for me, because on my own personal journey, I'm also expanding, and a team of about 50 now, and that's growing. And obviously, the larger you get, the communication, the lines start to blur and they start to break down, or there's challenges that you run into. So something like this, a structure for a business that is growing, I think is very important. As you said, it's a consistent communication process system that everyone uses to get.
Yeah. And as you're in the stage where you're having that type of growth, you have a real need for simplicity. So simplicity can just speeds everything up, and it's very efficient. So yeah, we can talk again about it, and I can point you in the direction of some key people who can dig in a little better than I did there. But yeah, it's amazing when you get everybody with clearly defined agendas, clearly defined roles, and understanding how to support each other, understanding how people need to be communicated with. It's just amazing how much faster and smoother everything runs.
Mm. Thank you so much, Dave. Again, I appreciate you giving that a crack and showing. No, I think it was great. As we're coming towards the tail end of the conversation, I normally ask a couple of questions to our guests. And I wanted to ask, are you excited about any upcoming projects in later of the year or next year?
Yeah, I'm always excited about stuff, and it's good for you for asking that. It's people. I'm not sure whether people know that I ask them this question all the time, or if they're getting sick of it. But I'm generally filled with positivity, and I love asking, "What are you excited about?" And there's lots of things I'm excited about these days. Next week, I'm going to have my first in-class post-COVID restriction in-class session with my strategic coach group. So I'm looking forward to that. I've recently bought a home and some investment properties in the Bahamas that are being renovated right now, and I'm setting up the rental portfolio and developing a team there. So just came back from a month down there with my family there part of the time too. So really, really excited about that. You mentioned when we were chatting earlier, you had an engineering former passion for you with your engineering was to be part of an F1 team. I'm going to the F1 in Montreal, taking my wife, going in a fun car.
Awesome.
So yeah, I'm spending time with my family. Canadians right now, summer is right around the corner. There's a lot to be excited about. And with Builder Nuggets, the momentum we have, we're planning our first events. We're inviting more coaches into the fold, and we're seeing so many things happen. So I'm always excited about the people I get to meet too. So that's great. How about you? What's something you're excited about?
We've just launched our second restaurant, so that was a big deal for us. So that was a lot of anticipation this year. It was 15 months in the making, 6 months of paperwork, 4 months of COVID, and it was just, anyway, we got there. I also had just launched this year, just 2 weeks ago, we call it the Butterfly Effect DAO. It's a non-profit organization, and it's about selling digital, basically to raise funds via visual campaigns to then donate back into community-driven initiatives or green tech, basically. And I'm really excited about that because we're doing 10 drops a year, which means there's 10 different campaigns each year, and that there's a lot to do in that space.
Amazing.
I'm very excited about that. The next one, we actually have been negotiating for quite a while in another space, interstate, so down in Melbourne. And if we're lucky enough to secure that deal, it will be a massive project for us, 1,500 square meters. It's a pretty decent size space. So we'll see how we go at that point.
Wow. Congratulations. Good luck with that one.
Thank you.
Yeah. I should say congratulations. Yeah. Good luck. But isn't it fun to be working on exciting things and what's next? It's so amazing.
Yeah, it's what keeps me fueled, keeps me going strong day to day.
Yeah. Awesome.
Are there any new beliefs or behaviors that have had a positive impact in your life in the recent years?
Oh, yeah. I think a combination of belief and behaviors coming from what I talked about earlier, the learning, digging in around myself and what I'm good at and why I struggled with other things in the past and not getting over it. I really encourage anybody to do that and to learn a little bit about what that means for them. And again, for me, that was reading Who Not How, learning about the relationship between the visionary and the integrator in EOS, and just digging into what am I meant to be doing, and don't worry so much about the things that you're not good at. Find the right who's to help you with that. And in order to do that, though, and this goes back to our discussion, you really need to be the right who for them and work hard on creating opportunity for other people, and they'll work hard on creating an opportunity for you. So that's the thing, that the newfound belief in what I was meant to do and being okay with it, and being okay with the stuff that I'm horrible at as well. Like, that's a real realization to deal with it. It bothered me for a long time. And when you invest in yourself and take the time to learn about that, you're in a much better position to lead than if you're carrying that weight around with you. So again, the freedom of relationship with yourself.
That's a powerful realization. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, you're welcome.
And finally, Dave, if you could only send one single line of SMS text to yourself 5 years ago, what would it be?
It's probably unfair to say something like, buy Apple, buy Amazon, all that stuff. It's like Back to the Future 2, where he goes and gets all the sports odds and everything like that. It would probably be something like, it's easy to say go for it or have the confidence and to encourage yourself or inspire yourself. But if I could have done this 5 years ago, I would get to know yourself and be yourself. Really is probably where I would go, because I'm much happier now, having understood this, and I, like I said, freed myself to some extent. And there's probably other people out there who are feeling like, man, why am I doing all these things that I don't like to do? Well, there's a way around that. There's some of the things we talked about, the books I read or I mentioned, and coaching. Go and invest in yourself and figure out what you should be doing. It's really worth it. It's hard to figure out on your own. And that's the other thing, is don't try and do it by yourself. Not many entrepreneurs, very few entrepreneurs ever accomplish anything meaningful on their own. And if you want to be a good leader, you got to make sure if you want other people to be attracted to you, have to have a great mission. You have to make it about them. You really need to invest in those people and make it rewarding for them. And your success is guaranteed. You watch the most successful people in the world, they worry about other people's successes, not their own.
That was a great piece of advice to end the podcast. Thank you so much, Dave.
Yeah, you're welcome.
And of course, how can people learn more and find out about you, Dave?
Yeah, I'm on LinkedIn, Dave Young 13. And to learn more about Builder Nuggets, buildernuggets.com. On Instagram as well, all the usual podcast stuff. It's a great way to get to know Duane or just connect through LinkedIn. And I love learning about other businesses. Yeah, thanks for the opportunity to do this and to spend some time with you. I can't wait to learn more about your restaurant expansion and 15,000 square meter venue. That sounds pretty exciting. You're doing exciting things as well. So I want to hear your stories too.
Thank you so much, Dave. I really appreciate the time that you've made for this conversation to happen. It's been a pleasure, and I feel like I've learned so much from you already. I'll be going over the notes again and again to dissect and to take notes. So I'll definitely be reaching out again. Thank you so much, Dave.
Well, I appreciate the opportunity.
Thanks for tuning in, everyone. I hope you enjoyed the show. All the links to the show notes will be available at kevinleesocial.com, spelled KEVINLY. Conversely, if you have any interviews that you'd love to recommend, please send it over to kevinleesocial@gmail.com. I'd love to connect. Thank you. Until the next episode.